Table Talk is not your typical D&D TTRPG podcast. We are not here to run you through our whole campaign.
We're here to talk about everything else in the space of tabletop roleplay.
I'm your host, Alejandra Wilhelm.
And I'm also your host, Mariah Gresham.
And we're your tabletop roleplay girlies. Alrighty, and we are live. Welcome back to another episode of Table Talk. We got just your two favorite girlies. Again, no special guests this round, but probably for the best because I feel like we're gonna get real into the shit.
I was just like randomly dancing. I don't know why, because this is an auditory medium.
And no one can see you, but it's cute.
Which is good because it was just for Ollie, I guess.
Just for my personal entertainment.
Because we are in the same location.
Yes. So this week's episode, as you could probably tell by the title, is going to be about Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate 3, the to me, just
the myth, the legend.
The myth, the legend, the icon. You know, we love to see it. Just as a little bit of housekeeping, obviously, if you are wary of spoilers, maybe skip this episode until you've had a chance to delve into Baldur's Gate yourself. We will try to be as good about not talking about like major plot stuff, but
although I've not finished the game.
Yeah,
and I don't know that you have either, because you've been shopping in Baldur's Gate. And I'm about to go into Baldur's Gate and start my shopping spree.
So for reference, me and Mariah both have only played up to Act 2. I'm technically in Baldur's Gate, but I'm just purely concentrated on getting clothes before really delving into the
I have so much
shit.
Stuff to sell.
So anything after that, you probably are good for spoilers. But if you haven't even touched it and you care about spoilers, just maybe come back to this episode at another time.
Yeah, I'll also on the re-listen and stuff. I'll we can comb through and we can flag some specific spoilers and things.
Yeah, and give you little notes here and there.
Yeah.
But to get into it, so Baldur's Gate, oh my fucking god. as just a game in general, but and also just in the way that it relates back to tabletop games, D&D.
Yeah.
How it's bringing, D&D in general has been getting put at the forefront media-wise with the new D&D movie. Obviously, Stranger Things was kind of like the catalyst to that kind of becoming
the
more
OGL drama.
The OGL drama, all that.
And just the rise of Critical Role in 1920.
Exactly.
And, all of these mega streams.
Exactly. The Baldur's Gate definitely has taken a cake in the gaming world as far as, in my opinion, game of the year.
It's absolutely raised the standards. It's one of those, Zelda Breath of the Wild with their open world format, Elden Ring was with their mechanics and the visuals, and it's another one of those really linchpin games that is raising the bar for the entire industry.
The way they have all these other AAA title companies sweating.
Well, yeah, that's what you're talking about with the new the Dragon Age game that we've all been waiting for forever, and they were supposed to put that out. I don't know, it was from 2024.
Yeah, Dreadwolf.
Yeah, but they've delayed it again, and we suspect, obviously we don't know this for sure, but it's in some of because of how many options and fully thought out paths that are going to be accounted for in Baldur's Gate, where it's you have to kind of do that now. Maybe not to that exact degree, because every game is not going to have that, but
yeah, but I think especially because I am a platinum level Dragon Age fanatic.
Yeah.
And they fall very in line with their formats as far as Baldur's Gate and Dragon Age. It is that high fantasy RPG, romanceable companions, multiple dialogue choices, and multiple endings. But Baldur's Gate definitely has gotten to a crazy level of, the amount of different endings, the amount of different scenarios, the way they accounted for not just everything you could technically already mechanically do, but even for shit people just getting creative with different solutions in the way that you do in D&D.
It's really interesting.
Is insane to me.
Yeah.
How they manage to really just get all of it right, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And like the point of this whole episode, we immediately just dove in is to sort of talk about uh playing Baldur's Gate and that experience, or just the experience of playing D&D at a table or
Yeah.
online, or like playing the actual tabletop role-playing game, and how they differ, how they're similar. Like, and I agree that Baldur's Gate has made D&D a whole lot more accessible to
I think so,
people,
yeah.
because you just sort of learn it by osmosis.
Mhm.
And like, of course, yeah, if you've played D&D and you know this, you're familiar with the spells and the combos and like good like multi-classes and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, you start off with like a little bit more information, but you pick it up really quickly.
Yeah. And like, even as someone that is familiar with D&D, like that initial first jump into it, it is such a weird feeling to know, like, I know mechanically what to do in D&D, but seeing it visualized for you, and having to like manage my action economy, and actually like seeing, when I've used my action, when I've used my bonus action and reactions and things like that, and actually seeing like a physical marker tell me like, hey, you've done this. And being able to like sift through my spells and sift through my things. And it is very interesting because I've played a lot of games where there's turn-based combat.
Yeah.
And oftentimes turn-based combat was just something that like I kind of had to dredge through.
It's a little tedious.
It's a bit tedious, and I know like a lot of gaming companies often felt like people didn't really enjoy that aspect of of games if they had turn-based combat, and tried to veer away from it.
Yeah, like there's combat in Dragon Age that is fun and it's turn-based, but yeah, there were definitely times where it was a bit tedious, or it's kind of like, okay, I'm doing the same old thing that I always do. Like I play mage, so it's like, all right, I'm gonna fireball these people and freeze these people, and like I come in and I stay blasting.
Yeah.
And it's fun, but like with longer combats, it gets tedious,
Yeah.
I think.
But Baldur's Gate, I think, did it so well in a sense of I think it's because of the fact that we have so many like items that genuinely can be used in the moment.
Yes.
And so you're not limited just to your character abilities. It has that moment. And to me, it's that translation of like, I see it in the video game, but I also know it happens at the table.
Oh yeah.
Where you will pause combat, or it's your turn, and you are literally looking through your inventory as well as your party members' inventory. Yeah. And you're like, what do I have? What can I use in this scenario to possibly like turn this around or get creative?
Like, let me tie a rope to this dart of flying and fucking
yeah. And it's
like
so
what? Where's that scroll that I know I have?
Yeah.
Because like I think I will say Gale got on my nerves at first, but I've come around to Gale.
Mhm.
First of all, I have a very hard time being mean to any video game characters. Like Ollie and I have a Dark Urge sort of playthrough with the two of us, where like I'm the Dark Urge character that's supposed to be leaning into it, and then Ollie's character is also just like
a Chaos Goblin.
Scary,
I'm like, I support women's rights and their wrongs.
Right, scary mommy gremlin druid. But Ale has to hold me at metaphorical gunpoint to actually pick like the mean choices. Because I'm like, I know this is supposed to be an evil playthrough, but what if we save this child? And you're like, no, that child has to die. That for thematic.
If we're committing to pure evil run, you gotta do it.
But so like, I felt a little guilty about the fact that I did not like Gale initially. But like now that I've seen more of edits of him, I'm like, okay, there's something here that I can work with.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about this in the sense of like, I was guilty, I think, in the very beginning when I first started playing Baldur's Gate, of judging all the characters, the companions, at face value as they presented. Because I think a lot of video games in the past do that, where like what you see is what you get. You might eventually like get a little bit deeper in the story, but they did it to a degree of nuance and complexity. Yeah. That is crazy to me. And it's like
they really are fully fleshed out people.
Yeah. And they have very, very oftentimes traumatic histories.
Yeah.
And they really connected. I'd be so interested to know if they actually like talk to psychologists and like all that stuff, and like really kind of delve deep into that, of like how those traumas manifest into characteristics.
I feel like they probably did, or it's like there's things that I think I say this because I know I use it in my writing, and like my academic background is in psychology and communication. And it definitely, my knowledge of that and how trauma forms and how we respond to trauma and how we process that healthily and unhealthily affects people's actions and the way they move through the world. And so I'm sure the writers took that into account if they didn't actually consult someone.
Yeah.
Because from what I've seen, like a lot of the character, like Astarion is
A prime
a
example.
prime example of like a character that has a lot of trauma around like consent and like all sorts of things, but it's presented in a way that's not like fetishized or made a joke of or anything of like it's really a very realistic and heartfelt portrayal of that, and it's relatable to people who have had that experience, or like it feels real.
Yeah.
And also, it feels very representative and respectful of like that experience.
Yeah. And I think they also did a really good way of like, they really played with every side of the coin on this because, like, yes, those aspects of Astarion. And then, but then also if you're like doing an evil run and you're trying to like play into it and let him go into his toxic coping mechanisms and really
he really
go full the other way. I like the way that they do it because it does not feel rewarding.
No, it feels, I don't know if I can do an evil Astarion playthrough because I don't know if I can deal with myself or him.
Yeah, it's hard, but it's like they explored corners of the human experience that I think a lot of other developers have never really been brave enough to do.
Yes. Yeah.
And I find that so interesting, but it's also like something that we oftentimes, at least in our games, we explore a lot, especially in like very role play heavy games. Me and my players specifically, like we we all make a joke about like there's always going to be an element of yourself that you are imposing upon your character.
For sure.
Oftentimes we're putting our own traumas into our characters.
Yeah.
And D&D can be kind of a healthy way to process that and feel like you're putting your life demons into an avatar, essentially placing them in a scenario where they defeat them, or have to deal with them, have to cope with them, have to process them. But hopefully you're doing it in a safe space with people that you've thoroughly communicated that with.
For sure.
But I love those elements of like, again, it's that feeling of like these people that made this game knew what they were doing and they got it so right.
Yes.
Like I have no notes, no complaints.
No, yeah, it would really be interesting to hear from, and maybe this is out there and I just haven't looked for it because arguably I haven't searched, see this is a thing. But like the writers and the developers, and because I know like some of the cast, like that voice acting cast had played D&D and some of them really hadn't before. But I wonder if like the people who made like the nuts and bolts of the game, how much experience they've had, because I know it had to be a lot, and like what they brought in, and like I would love to hear like almost like how it was made.
Yeah.
Sort of documentary on Baldur's Gate. That would be really interesting to me.
Because they got everything from the interpersonal stuff right to mechanically the spells and like all the little nuances of like this is concentration, this is that, and whatever, and this is distance, and like how they can affect each other, how they can play off each other, even things like not spell related, and finding creative solutions using whatever random items you have. If you're going to have Carlette carry 15 barrels into a fight and then chuck them at people, go with God. But it's just so fascinating to me because like when I was young, always wanted the idea of like getting into video games as a career. And this game specifically, I'm like, this is it. It's
like, to be a writer on Baldur's Gate.
To be a writer on Baldur's Gate.
Damn.
And also it's so interesting to me too that like a star, I remember not a star, Neil, was his last name? Was it
Neil Newbon?
Something. But the guy who voice acts for Sorry, Neil. But the guy who voice acts for Astarion, I heard him talk about like on a panel where, obviously they recorded a bunch of different lines.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that some of those lines you will never hear unless you unlock a very specific scenario
Yeah, which
or
like
do a very niche thing.
for people who like I'm usually a completionist of video games. I've not been at all with this one because I'm like I know I'm gonna play it over and over. So
Yeah.
all the very important plot things that I've just skipped or bumbled right on past, I'm like, that's for another playthrough.
Mhm.
Like I definitely fully figured out that I'm completely messed up someone's quest. They could be a companion and like they had to stay and go back and like tend to their trees and stuff. But like that's okay. Because I did not need to be tempted by I did not need to be tempted by Halsing because this playthrough is to romance Astarion and try to make him be a decent being.
Decent human, yeah.
So I can't have the distraction of the giant
the mountain
massive druid. Why'd they draw him like that? Why is it that big? Why is it that big?
Oh my
He didn't need to be that big.
God. Oh yeah. The romances alone, that is like a whole other thing to talk about. Because me personally with video games, I think I truly fell in love with video games when obviously, as I mentioned, Dragon Age girly, Mass Effect girly. And when I remember being so young and playing, like I played other games and liked them and all that stuff, but those were the ones that that was my first fixation.
Yeah, he like really got it.
I really dug in there. And I got fixated on the fact that like I had options and that like I loved the idea of the things that I do in the previous game get imported to the next and can change the whole.
Like you have a role in shaping the story.
Yeah.
Whereas like more like first person games where it's like you're there to experience the story that the developers have prepared for you, which is awesome and cool and great. But it's a different kind of enjoyment when you have a role in how the story turns out and like what you do or don't do has impact.
Yeah. And that got me so addicted, especially with like Dragon Age Origins. You have a different beginning of the game depending on the race and the class and even the gender that you choose. So it's a whole different beginning to your experience. And then everything is shaped from there. The way people perceive your character is shaped from there and those choices. So I got so obsessed that I went through a period of time in my youth in which I was playing that game over and over again. And I would literally run through the whole game, play it from dawn to dusk. I'd go to sleep, wake up, boot my computer back up, and keep going. I got to the point where I was...
Or OGPC. That's probably what...
That little laptop
chugged. That laptop,
chugged. But I got to the point where I was finishing those games like in 2 to 3 days.
Yeah, you have them memorized. Because when I played Inquisition, I would be looking for something and you would be 3 hours away, not even watching the screen. And you'd be like, oh no, it's at fucking 35 degrees north and 28 degrees west, up over the river and through the valley. Like, thank you.
I'm like, I recognize that tree anywhere.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I was looking at this for an hour. That's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, they are the blood that flows through my veins at this point. And yeah, I got to the point where I was finishing them in like 3 days max, and then would just literally like skip the credits, go back to character creation, make the new. I played through every combination possible.
Thank you next.
Yeah, thank you next. And the other thing that grabbed me so much was that this was like the first game I experienced where like there was romance.
Yeah.
And you could begin a relationship with your companions. Also the first time I was ever approached with the question of like, there's a female character that's hitting on me.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do about that, and I'm not ready to address what that means about me.
It's also like that with how you have with Garrus, where it's like, I don't want to analyze
what this says about me as a person. I remember because it was Liliana. And they really love Liliana. Pour one out for Liliana, but in Origins, she's like a Gale. She approaches your character right from the jump and is like, hey, good looking. And I'm like,
Liliana would treat you right though.
She really would.
Liliana is a spy mommy and you love her.
Yeah. And I remember like just like Liliana wanted to talk or something, and eventually at some point like the light bulb went off and I was like, oh, she's hitting on. Like, this is not just like a girl's chat. This is not a little no. This is very much she's hitting on me.
Like, no, I'm trying to fuck you.
Yeah, she's trying to fuck me.
That was me after the side railing, and then we'll go back. But that was me after the Goblin Camp. Like, I messaged in our server because I was just right after that. Like, I talked to everyone after that first big battle, and like everyone literally was like, so are you gonna come to my bed tonight? And I'm like, I am one simple, somewhere on the queer spectrum, mostly confused girly. Like, please don't do this to me. And I had to reload it a couple times because this is where my initial frustration with Gail happened. Gail's like, oh, I want to I just want to show you something. And I'm like, well, I guess what he wants to show
A
me
little
is
magic trick.
yeah, I guess it's his dick, because apparently if you do that, then everybody's like, oh my god, like you and Gail. And I'm like, I have literally already fucked Astarion twice and no one said anything about it except Withers, who gives you like,
Withers do be out here calling you on your name.
Withers gives you like a weird sex talk that I didn't ask for. I remember they like talked about like respecting people, and yeah, we just went off. He's like, so I see you've been having relations,
Cavorting.
and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed,
being a harlot,
and then we'll circle back to re-specking Astarion in the morning, because I can't deal with this now.
I can't have the birds and the bees talk with a long undead
like Jesus. Okay,
demigod situation.
But anyway, back to Liliana.
Yeah. And yeah, and so like I remember starting to go through like the process of romancing Zevron and Alistair and whatever. And of course, you know, as I was playing multiple run-throughs, I'm like, well, clearly I have to go experience every fucking romance humanly possible.
Gotta catch them all.
Gotta catch them all. Like, yeah, for real. Collect them. But I got so addicted. And from then on, I was like, any RPG that had an element of romance, I would absorb it into my soul.
Yeah.
And
just
then
trying to get that hit.
Yeah. That sweet serotonin boost. And like Mass Effect was just a rinse and repeat. I was like, this is just Dragon Age, but in space.
Dragon Age. Cyberpunk Space Dragon
Cyberpunk
Age.
Space Dragon Age.
That's another one I need to get back in a Mass Effect.
Oh my god, it's so good. But I will say that like since those two games, for the rest of time until literally now,
it's not really
nothing has ever hit the same as those. No. And like the way Baldur's Gate has reignited that fucking goblin within me.
Because it's like, it's a updated like 21st century version of that. Well, like those games came out in the century, but you know what I mean. Like it's with this tech, it's with these processors and these graphics and this like reactivity.
And also like they're like, we'll put it all out there. The raw traumatic elements of humanity, and also full horny sexy.
Yeah.
With these NPCs.
Like usually you're like, because I know like we've talked about like with Garrus before, we're like, give us the romance, you cowards. Like the fan fiction.
Yeah, they're like the most intimate thing that you're gonna get is a headbutt.
Yeah.
Maybe a kiss in the next game if you're lucky.
They have that one like salsa scene, which is real great. But like that's
but that's not
the heart of the fandom. That's the spiciest we get.
Yeah, but that's not the freaking like Pornhub situation that happens with fucking
and then
Liara.
It's like, literally. And then in like Baldur's Gate, it's not even softcore porn at some points. I mean, you can check if you don't want nudity. Like I got that. Like you had to do my game did a little check-in with me.
Well, look, consent check. Are you a little lines and veils,
like,
if you will.
Are you still good with nudity? Yeah. And I'm like, obviously.
You're like, no, I would like extra nudity actually on my order. Thank you.
So I don't know if they just leave some clothes on there in those scenes. Or
I have no idea.
But I'm probably never gonna find that out. But yeah, there's some of those be on TikTok, and I'm like, well, this isn't a safe tag to look through.
No, I'm like, sometimes I'm like, normally I have to go to like explicit sites for this, but you just out here,
right here
in front of God and everyone,
for free.
But
for $59.99 or whatever the cost.
Yeah, and I've had the $59.99. I've had the thought of like, you know, thinking about myself as like a young teen playing Dragon Age and all the things that awoke in me. And I'm like, oh, the teens of today will be so much more advanced than me.
Literally, like, right.
Ooh, yeah, they really.
I hadn't thought about that.
They had no holds barred. I'm like, yeah, no, they really go in on all of it. I'm like, there is some alternate version of me who is like fucking 15 right now, and she's about to get that scene with the mind flayer, and things are going to change for her for the rest of her life. The soldiers who really went and dug out that spicy mind flayer scene, pour one out for them.
Like
they gave it to us for free.
You know, good for them for just putting that on their computer drive history for like the NSA and gotten everyone to know about. Because well, like, how do you even get that.
I love it. I love every second of it.
It's interesting though. I was like, there's a lot of tentacle.
There's much that
And
there's
not much time.
There's there's so much tentacle and not much time.
That's a shirt or something.
Yeah. And like to go back to what you mentioned about like the whole, I saw a thing that was just, you know, you after that first goblin camp scene and then like suddenly your entire camp is like eyeing you like just a piece of meat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I mean, if you think about it, right?
True.
It's a bunch of hot adventurers
yeah.
on limited time. They're
Right.
like, we could die tomorrow. We could die in the next 5 minutes.
They're like, half of us died an hour ago in that fight.
And had to be resurrected. And had to have a little chat with Withers to bring us back. But yeah, and I'm like, yeah, no shit.
It makes sense.
They're all like, and I love the idea of how openly they are in the sense of like, they're like, if you reject them, they're like, fine, I'm gonna go fuck Will then.
Yeah, can we talk about what Lae'zel says to you if you reject Lae'zel?
Yeah, Lae'zel.
I'm not gonna say it on the show. I mean, I know we tagged the explicit tag, but like,
I don't remember what she actually like full on says, but I know she's just like,
it's a full court press, which was more than I was ready for.
Yeah, she's like, well, the approach in general is very aggressive.
Yes,
it's very much like, you literally still reek of blood and it makes me horny and I'm gonna like fuck you against a wall or some shit. And then you reject her and she's like, all right, you're fucking lost. I'm gonna go literally break Will's hips or something.
It's like, those are horns you can grab on.
Yeah, those are handlebars. I'm gonna be right back. And it's fucking hilarious to me. I'm like, oh, also another note, like as a poly girl, being given fucking actual poly options.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Ugh.
It's so good. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Like, it cracks me up so much that they fully made Halsin like the most poly man to ever be poly.
He approaches you as the most like little wholesome nature boy.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm a freak.
But he's also like, it's such a great example of like, if someone's like, hey, how does healthy polyamory look? Show them that clip of Halsin propositioning you and it like you if you already have
and you're
a
like, I have a partner.
And then he's like, great. Go talk to them and like clear that, like communicate fully. Like hopefully they'll approve and like maybe even join if they're into that. And then like come back around and
check in with me later. Yeah,
like, we're big chilling. And I'm like, that's the representation the poly community needs because it gets so much flack for no reason.
Absolutely, and I love Halsin so much, and I love
Halsin's one of my favorite babies.
Oh my fucking god!
I'm romancing Halsin and Shadowheart in my next playthrough, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, I love. I've heard the thing of like, if you approach Shadowheart, she's like so approving, and she's like, "Girl, go fucking climb Mount Halsin. I would too, goddamn." And I'm like, "That's my girl. That's like, my fucking girl."
If you mess up Halsin's quest like I did, and he isn't part of your party, like after he leaves, Shadowheart's like, wow, it's sad to not have Halsin as a traveling companion. I really enjoyed looking at him. And I'm like, same, girl.
Yeah. Or like, same. I think he makes Karlach nervous at one point and he says something and she's like, you like bigger women, like strong women? And he's like, fuck yeah, I do. I'm like, bro, Pat's Halsin around. God damn.
He said choo-choo.
He said choo-choo. He said he saw this band of hot singles come in.
He said, I'm a humble caboose. Like,
yeah. And he's like, I'm a giver. Listen, I'm here to please just about everybody. Oh my god. And it makes so much sense too. He's like, girl, I've been around for 400 years.
Yeah, it's like this old hippie, hot, giant.
Free loving. He's like, I'm just here to spread my fucking seed.
Like Woodstock ass druid. That's like
with giant fucking bara titties and like buffed out arms the size of my head.
And he's like a foot and a half taller than everyone else.
Oh my god.
Like, for what?
Yeah.
Like Karlach's the barbarian and he's like twice Karlach's width.
Yeah. And the way the people that make this game fucking feed you every second of the time that you're playing, and they're so self-aware and like, how is it? Yeah, people call me Daddy Halsin, and I'm like, damn, it's just right there on the tin. They just know.
Yeah, or it's that clip where Saurian's like, I would be the only evil power inside of you, and I'm like, sir,
it is. Oh, it like there are times where I have to like look away from my screen.
It's 5 p.m. at this came up. Like 4 other human souls, they're right. Like, yeah, I need you to simmer down.
Oh, I think one of my favorites is the scene in the goblin camp with like the Loviatar guy.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, and Shadowheart's like, would you have gotten with the main character if you knew they were about this to start? And he's like, well, I had my fucking hopes.
He's like, listen.
But like, it's good that it's confirmed now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, like the way I look at these characters, and I'm like, that's just my D&D party. That's just us when we sit down and play on a casual Saturday.
They knew who they were marketing to.
They knew exactly what they were doing with this fucking game. Oh my god, it's so good, but it's also so refreshing in general to have that element of I don't know. It's just like they understood their audience.
Yes,
to a T.
Very much so. And yeah, seeing that of like I would love to see like the market research they did and stuff like that. Of like
how many horny D&D players
what
sit down
focus
with?
groups did y'all assemble? Also, what I wonder, because like you said about like Dragon Age and Mass Effect, having continuity between the games. Like, I've never. I mean, this is Baldur Gate 3, so I assume there was a 1 and a 2. I've never played.
I've never touched it. Never known about it.
I know nothing about them. But I wonder, especially with like how popular Baldur's Gate 3 is, if there will be continuity
maybe
in the future games.
I know that there is an element of continuity because I've done like little bits of I've seen some stuff on TikTok of like the previous games, and those previous games are old. So like I don't think I'll ever even touch them. But I've seen stuff of Jaheira in like the previous games and like
interesting.
A little bit of her lore and her story, and like I think the previous game is literally playing through some of the stuff that she went through in her like before that she references in Baldur's Gate 3. I think Minst is also in the previous games. He's like someone they kind of holding over. I think obviously like Ketheric Thorn. I think in one of the previous games it is like the whole Ketheric Thorn Char shit and like Jaheira, like that whole thing. So
it would be interesting. Because I also liked how they did it with the Dragon Age Devastated, where they had that you could make the choices, because that's what I did for like Dragon Age 1,
the Dragon
Age 2. Yeah, and so you could like make the plot decisions and go through and like basically build your own save file that way if you don't want to play through
because
the game.
Especially for games like that, like I don't even want to know how long Baldur's Gate 3 has been in production. I think it's like 7 years or something
like that, yeah.
And that is the hard part of like those games coming out so far between. Like Dragon Age almost consistently has about 10-year gaps between them. And
the tech comes like
the tech
and bounds.
Yeah. And so the Dragon Age Keep came out because people like they understood that Dragon Age Origins and even Dragon Age 2 were so outdated that a lot of people wouldn't really be interested in playing them. And I never blame them. Anytime I try to indoctrinate someone into the games, I'm like, I will not blame you.
Right.
If you do not want to play these like first 2 games.
Yeah, like if you weren't already entrenched like when they kind of came out, then it's like
and I will literally sit someone down for like a masterclass lore dump about the first 2 games so that they can
what you did with me, and you just walk me through the plot of those first 2 games. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, so that you can start the third, because Dragon Age Inquisition keeps like a mother.
It really does. Like I would have small gripes about like motion controls, but overall like it's a very good solid game, and I think it's from like 2014 or something like
something like I think it came out whenever I got out of high school.
So probably like 2014 2015, something like that. But yeah, it's aged really, really well.
And like still keeps to this day, and is still very, very playable.
It's still super enjoyable. I played Inquisition like last year.
But yeah, I wonder if they'll do that with. I hope they keep making games, because God, it's so good.
I mean, they're absolutely going to keep making games because they've made an absolute killing off of like Baldur's Gate 3. So,
I think Johnny, like our friend Johnny from Talking XP, like had teased like the next game. Like, what if the next game is like a Ravenloft situation? And I'm like, I would nut.
That'd be great.
I would nut openly, just in front of God and everyone, because that would be incredible.
You like work through the different dread domains. That'd be really, really
that would feed my soul in so many good ways. But yeah, I can't wait to see like what else they do with the success of this game. Another thing I really love about it is also just like taking it back to like how that translates to like real games that we play still, um it has given me such a good like visualization of, because oftentimes like mechanics and the crunch and the whatever, like
Yeah.
that's not something that I engage with super well, or it takes me a little bit.
Yeah.
Having Baldur's Gate almost as a tool to learn the
Yeah.
mechanics of certain classes I've never played before
Oh, same. To like play test different
is
things.
so helpful.
And like test out different potential builds that you might want to do.
Oh yeah.
And see how they run and all of that before you commit to something for like a tabletop game.
Yeah, or like understanding how certain spells works, because you then cast it and you're like, oh, I see what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And how to most effectively use them. And I'm like, oh, that's the dangerous part about it, because like one, I have that addictive personality where now I'm like, I think I got a hand on the game and I did not make it past Act 1 for the first like few weeks I had the game.
Yeah,
because I
like,
kept making new characters.
I know. I've tried to like hold myself to finishing my first playthrough before I start another one.
No, I kept making new fucking characters, and I've got like all my playthroughs planned out as far as like these characters are going to romance this character, and they're going to be this kind of playthrough, and wanting to play through like all the classes that I really want to work through. Also, they made it so easy and accessible to just like at random points in the story. It's like, I just want to try a whole new fucking thing. I'm just going to go talk to my buddy Withers and just fully respect my entire life.
I love that. That's a thing I love in video games anyway. And I love that you can do that in Baldur's Gate. And it's quite easy. And like, it just lets you go level by level and like re-level them up. And it also makes it quite easy to like change things and like subclass features and stuff when you level up as well, which is nice.
Yeah. So I've just been fucking obsessed with just trying different class combinations and different things. And now like, or even just the idea of like now, I think now and forevermore, probably, unless it's like a race that's not offered, and even then I could probably finesse it with mods and shit, is just like every time we enter a new campaign, making that character in the character creator.
Yeah.
And just taking lots of pictures and be like, that's my character.
Yeah.
Because it's the character creation is so good, especially when you have mods. Oh my god.
Yeah, the mods for like especially face shapes and stuff really, really do a lot.
It truly was made for the girls and the gays, because like one, the aesthetics on point. The clothes, immaculate.
Right.
Like the fact that you can toggle that whole like, I want to be in my camp clothes, but have my stats of my armor. So I don't ever have to deal with that shit of either A, I'd have to suffer a lack of aesthetics for optimization.
Right. Yeah.
Or I am wearing a cohesive outfit that looks good, but it is not the most like
attractive.
No, not it is the most attractive option, but it's not the most optimal out of the things I currently own. Because I used to do that with like Monster Hunter a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I will be dead in the ground before I shift my armor to the next level,
like,
until I've hunted that monster to extinction so that I have the full set.
Yeah.
Because I cannot shift over and have like not a cohesive fit. No, I can't do it. I can't do it. I refuse to do it. This is a dress up simulator with extra steps, and I recognize that.
Yeah, it's Sims where you also like kill monsters.
Yeah. It is a dress up simulator and a dating sim combined into one, and there just happens to be combat that I do in between.
Yeah. You have to make your own clothes.
Yeah.
And they're made from monster birds.
Yeah.
So that's
Oh no, I'm talking about Baldur's Gate.
Oh yeah, also that.
Baldur's Gate full on. Like this is a little,
I also really like
pop dress and
yeah, Baldur's Gate lets you dye your clothes. Like I didn't do that for a while, but I've started playing around with it now because I've just been like,
oh, I'm obsessed.
Stashing my dye in my like potion pouch. But that's been really fun. Yeah. I need to like actually dye some of my other companions.
It is hard that like you don't really get access to clothes until Act 3.
Yeah.
And then like there's some things that you can do. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, Mathara, but I do gotta kill you for that slutty little outfit.
Yeah. That's my camp clothes.
I gotta have it. I'm so sorry. And right now I'm walking through Baldur's Gate, and like we mentioned, I'm literally just shopping in the sense of like I'm going to every merchant that I can possibly get to, looking at their inventory, looking at what I can buy, and looking at like every chest and stuff. I went straight to Sheris's Caress or whatever the fuck, and I was like, that's the brothel. I know the slutty clothes are in here. I gotta have Halcyon with his titties out.
Yep.
And I was
The
like,
good shit's
my
there.
priority. I know that there's earthquakes happening. I gotta get Halcyon's titties out.
Yep.
I'm gonna
And
address
then-
those
and then we
earthquakes at
can
a later
fix-
time.
Yeah. That's integral to the earthquake.
Yeah.
The stability of the earth.
The stability of Halcyon's titties.
Yeah.
He needs harnesses.
The earth must see them to calm down.
The other thing that I am loving is obviously I spend a lot of time on TikTok, both for this podcast and also because I'm addicted to it.
Yeah, our personal enjoyment.
But I have loved the absolute flood of like women
Mm-hmm.
being obsessed with the game. Obviously,
Yeah.
because like the romance options that are offered, incredible. The
characters,
characters, incredible. Everybody's hot. The joke of it's like a dating sim is true, but also like the romance dialogues and the stories
So
that is
good.
so incredibly good and has attracted so many like women and like queer folk and
It's very female gazy.
very female gazy, which is again refreshing. And I love that surgence of women I've seen getting into it. Even women that are like, I have never played a fucking video game in my life,
They're like, I'm
but I
allowed
had
today.
to pick this up.
I'm gonna download.
But I'm gonna figure it out.
I'm gonna put my poor computer to downloading this behemoth of
Yeah.
a file. It
My
takes up
little
a
MacBook
third.
Air is gonna have to chug through
Yeah,
it.
takes up a third of my storage, but like we're gonna make it work. Fuck that resume. I don't need her.
You don't need her. We're gonna factory reset this computer just so
Yeah.
it can run this game.
Yes.
And delete my entire life off of it. But I love seeing that surge of like that influx of like the girls and the gays coming in to play this game. And then I've seen like it's just warmed my heart a little bit, like seeing women that are like, oh, me and my other friends are like making our tabs, and then we have
Mhm.
little backstories for our tabs, and like
Yeah.
are sharing what's happening with our tabs, and da da da. And then at some point they're like, at what point are we just playing D&D? Like,
It's like now.
and
Yeah.
now you are, and like
You are.
that. I love having seen, and obviously like we're a part of that like surge of how D&D has shifted
Absolutely.
towards a more like female and queer predominant audience.
Yeah, a female and queer inclusive
Yes.
audience.
And diverse as well.
Yes.
And I love seeing how like things like the D&D movie or this game or everything else bringing new people into the hobby
Mm-hmm.
and having them realize like, oh, this is, I don't know, just getting more opportunities to share that.
Yeah, and like realize the different things that D&D and TTRPGs can be. It's like, yeah, like you can have ones that are like super combat heavy and like they're dungeon crawls and they're, meat grinders and all that, but it can also be super story focused.
Yes.
And it's like there's a ton of different options, there's a ton of different ways to run them, and they're all right. Like everything is good as long as it's what aligns with you and your players. And so it's been cool for people to see how big that world is. Because like I didn't really grasp that until I got into it.
Mhm.
And I think you're probably similar.
Yeah.
It's like you have an idea of like what D&D is, but then once you actually start experiencing the game and the world and consuming the content and watching the different, Matt Mercers and Brennans and Abrias of the space, running all of these variety of games, it opens it up a lot.
Yeah. And like, yeah, having that element of like, it is what you want it to be. It can be the game, the kind of game, the kind of style of game that gives you the most reward, whether that be like RP or combat or what have you. But like, I think it opens up so much more opportunity the more of a household name that is, because like now it's not really viewed as like, oh, you play D&D. It's
not like
I feel like
stigma of it is not really a thing anymore.
Yeah. And I think because there's been forms of media that are more like
the
easily,
movie,
yeah,
and yeah.
easily digestible for people to like be like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, I think I kind of get it more, rather than just the again, like when you try to explain D&D to somebody that's never played it, it's like, so you sit at a table
Yeah, that's us
with a
trying to
bunch of grown
explain it.
adults
Yeah. And you pretend to
and you
be
play pretend for several
fantasy
hours
people, and you have dice for some
and you
reason.
do some simple math,
Yeah, that you're bad, very bad at.
and it's so hard to explain
But why? Yeah.
why it's so good until somebody sits at that table and not only sits at that table and plays, but like have seen that little moment
Mhm.
when it clicks for them.
Yeah.
And they're like, they are no longer just sitting at a table looking at a mini, and they're experiencing a
Mhm.
scene, or they're really getting into the story.
Like they're feeling the emotions of that character. They're experiencing that moment, or feeling like the frustration or the happiness or like jubilation at things going well, or like landing that attack that you stacked all your stuff on.
Yeah.
That Hail Mary. And then it works, and it's
And how
you
it's
lose your
it's got
shit.
that element of like, it's got that little element of gambling, and you're just like,
Yeah.
ooh, like I really need this to work, and it's addicting. But then also, like, I think one of my favorite things about it is it's a space for you to flex that like imagination muscle that you lose as a child, that you don't have many situations that you can really implement it in,
Yeah.
except for really, in my mind, D&D.
Yeah, because like we both tell our jokes about like we're both big maladaptive daydreaming girlies who can just sit on a couch, like on a porch swing in my case, for hours on hours.
Just listening to a specific playlist.
Yep, put on a playlist and just go into
my mind palace.
So deep in the mind palace that you like forget where you're at in the corporeal world. But that is like playing D&D is like getting to do that with other people.
Yeah.
And like having other people controlling those NPCs, right, that exist like in your maladaptive daydreams. And that is an interesting difference, I think, from playing D&D at a table versus in Baldur's Gate. Because in Baldur's Gate, you're controlling everyone, which is cool and like interesting and good for like learning how different things work, but like it is all on you. And then when you're playing D&D, it's not. Like it's a collaborative storytelling, and like everybody's running their own gal and all binary pal. Yeah. And you're all working together. Yeah. And so that's an interesting difference. Yeah. Too, I think.
In the sense of like, yeah, like sometimes I get frustrated if I'm Shadowheart and she fucking misses like her third guiding bolt, and I'm like, bitch, what the fuck are you doing? But it is still me controlling her, and I told her to do that attack, or you misuse your resources. Yeah.
But that like, frustration, of like, I always do the thing where it's always with Shadowheart, dude, because bless her, she like doesn't really have multi-attack or anything. It's like it's fair. She's very good at what she does, but like a lot of the times I would like I'm better at not doing it now because I figured out how to like correctly back out and like change my options. But like I would start to cast a spell and I'm like, no, that's not what I want to do. So then I would push like the C button, which usually makes you kind of crouch down and hide.
But that is an action.
But that's an action. So then like I've used her action and I'm like, well, shit. The only thing she can do with her bonus action is like a healing word, a mass healing word, or a spiritual weapon, which I live and die by a spiritual weapon. My spiritual I did a boss fight last night, and my spiritual weapon
puts in the Lord's work.
Really did that simple mall spiritual soldier did a good bit of the damage to that boss. He was just floating there, just whacking on his turn, and it's great.
Like, hi, I'm the size of a toothpick compared to the fucking god of bones.
Yeah, God, that boss.
But I'm gonna keep chugging in the name of my mom.
I know, it's always funny, like when you miss, like in any video game, like Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate or anything, like when you're finding skeletons and you miss, and it's like it just goes through their ribs. Yeah, that always makes me giggle. The skeletons in Elden Ring are a pain in the ass.
Yeah, they are.
Those dungeons, those like crypt dungeons. Awful.
Yeah, I think also like Baldur's Gate is one of those elements of like I think it's one of the first times that whenever I get to a fight that I am probably outmatched in, I get like excited for it.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of that element, like again, taking it back to like earlier in the episode, that element of like you can get creative
For sure.
and you have so much room to really do whatever the fuck you want. And so I get so addicted to that moment of like, okay, there's this many enemies. I'm in a room. I have this much and da, da, da.
Yeah.
And then I'm like looking through my inventory. I'm like,
You're like,
I need to make
back
every
against the ropes.
yeah,
like,
I need to make every fucking turn count and go for it. And it's one of the few times that I can honestly say I've ever been like genuinely having so much fun.
Same.
In the combat, as much fun in the combat as the like story element.
Yeah,
whereas
for sure.
other games I've always been like, I'm chugging through that combat just to get to the next cutscene.
Yeah, like I'll keep using the Elden Ring example, but like just exploring and like bebopping around on torrent, like exploring the world, like that's cool. And you get in the mini combats, like I love that. But with a lot of times those harder combat things for me, because I'm admittedly not the best at video games. I had a very long period where I didn't play them, so don't have just that ingrained dexterity.
Yeah.
But like, it's just me throwing myself at the wall like over and over and over and over, and I either do it until I get it or I get frustrated and I put it down. But with Baldur's Gate, so much of it is like outwitting the game.
Yeah.
And also so much of it is random because it's so fun to see like on different playthroughs or when you're playing like multiplayer or something, like you can have a fight go really, really well and really clean one time. And then you can absolutely get milli rocked.
Yeah.
The next time. And same enemies, like same party makeup, but it's just like the order in which your initiative is
can change the whole game
alone can change it, or like what those AI operated characters decide to do, or like the AI decides to have them do, can drastically change it. And so it's also, that's so cool from a replayability standpoint because it always feels different. It's never going to be exactly the same.
And I love how they do this in the sense of like you could fully, and again, it's a very D&D thing of you can talk your way out of combats. But yeah, like I remade Val in Baldur's Gate, and she's like my highest charisma character out of anybody. But she really do just be talking her way out of major boss fights.
30 charisma checks
casually, like it's nothing. But somehow she is my highest charisma character, and not a single one of my companions. I'm in Act 3 with this bitch. How did that happen? I don't know.
Do you just not take enough long rests?
No, girl, I do.
Well, because like in our multiplayer where we play, like I took a lot more long rests.
I take long rests literally every time that any one of my characters are like low on spell slots
or like rages.
Yeah, because I'm just like, no, we're just gonna take so I can be maxed out on my spell slots.
Weird.
And
really weird.
Yeah, she takes hella things, and like I think the character that I ran before her that I ended up deleting her save because I wanted to do something different with that character. She had no problems like romancing Astarion and getting everybody to like bark up her tree, or whatever. But for some reason, Val could not. Like Astarion didn't like her, Shadowheart didn't like her. Karlach is like, I'm gonna go fuck somebody else in the camp.
And
I'm like, damn.
as a friend. And then it's
and then Withers comes over and he's like, girl, you got no riz. And I'm like, can you shut the fuck up?
You're a corpse.
He's like, yeah, you're alone. And I'm like, God damn.
So are you. Like, calm down.
Like, my only hope right now is the fact that Halsin has like hinted at it and been like, yeah, I'm down.
Halsin's so respectful. You've really got, he'll be saying some out of pocket shit to you.
Yeah.
That's like very subtly out of pocket. And then he'll just go on and be like, let's go into this fight. It's like, cool, I need a minute.
But also Halsin's one that like you don't even get the option to romance him until Act 3.
Yeah.
So it's
and also like you got in that one brothel scene, Astarion like gaslit you about like wanting. He's like, oh,
the Drow was like, ooh, what if your little pale friend joined? I'm like, good luck with that. He doesn't want to fuck me. And then he's like, I've been trying to get this woman to bark up my tree the whole time, and she just hasn't bit the bait. And I looked at him like, you mother.
Like Val and you.
Val and me both were like, who is me?
What you're not gonna do.
What you're not gonna do.
Gaslight.
I have been barking up your tree. You turned me down the first night. You told me no.
Damn.
At the Goblin Camp thing, because I was like, I literally beelined it to Astarion.
Yeah.
And he was like, nah. Turned me down hard and has not had a single interesting thing to say to me since.
So bizarre.
Yeah, and so like, I was joking about it. I was like, you know what, fucking Val is just gonna go fuck the Mind Flayer and literally take over the world
Good for her.
out of spite
Go for
for
her.
nobody else wanting to fuck her.
Go for
The
her.
world is gonna end because of y'all.
For women's rights and their wrongs.
But then yeah, like every other character I have.
Oh, is the Mind Flayer like at the end? So it's like a
Mhm.
later. Oh, okay, I didn't know if it was like one of the early Mind Flayers, and I was like, how did you?
No, yeah, he's I think that
It's like the big
that
big
stuff's
boy.
gonna happen in Act 3. I think I'm like closing in on it.
Yeah, I've not even got to Act 3.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to go shopping tonight. I'm excited.
Woo! I love it. But yeah, in summary, Baldur's Gate, 10 out of 10.
It's very
Such a
good.
great fucking time.
I highly recommend it. It's good as a video game if you're curious. Because like also a lot of people's complaint or problem with like wanting to get into D&D and not doing it is because like they don't know how to find a group, or they don't have any friends that are interested in playing it, or they don't know if it's something they would like to do and don't want to make like a big upfront investment, right? And something they're not even sure if they would enjoy. And so if you like video games anyway, especially like turn-based combat and like role-playing story, I'm fully blanking on the type of game. So everyone at home's just screaming at me what the actual name of it is, of games like Dragon Agent.
Oh, like RPGs.
It's just
yeah.
It's just
part of our brand name.
I don't know why I thought it was something else. Okay.
You are stunning.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Just beautiful. Wars were fought in your name, girl.
Face launched 1,000.
Thank God for it.
Where was I going with that? Anyway, I'm leaving all of that in because I must. I simply must.
Contractually obligated to leave all my goods.
I'm contractually obligated to humiliate myself on my own podcast. If you have been curious about D&D and you already like video games and RPGs, like that is a really great testing ground for it to see if it's actually something you enjoy.
100%. And it's also a good way to like even start, because oftentimes whenever people have approached me being like, oh, I want to play, but like I'm afraid I won't be good, or like
I'm overwhelmed by the
rules. It would be a good way to genuinely learn mechanically how it's meant to be played,
because you learn by osmosis.
Yeah,
you hover over the items and the spells and read their description.
You learn about action economy and like that you can only do so many things per turn, and that's really one of the main things you have to learn to play.
Like, if you do a dumb thing, if you're like, wow, I threw that toy walk at somebody and it didn't go well, and that was my action. So when you're
now you've been arrested for assault.
Or it's like, I set that spider loose, and now there's a spider loose, and I'm arachnophobic, and I am questioning my choices. That was me when I jumped down with the spiders in the Goblin Camp, which your other moment was like when the birds swarm around you.
Yeah, so I have an irrational fear of large gatherings of birds, not birds individually, large gatherings of birds. And yeah, Mariah's arachnophobic, so I often see her cringe whenever there's a spider on screen.
Yeah, it's like I don't hate spiders. I really respect their role in the ecosystem. My thing, it's more about like, don't touch me and I won't touch you. And I also don't want the webs to touch me. So like, if in my rule, I'm fine living in blissful ignorance. Anything above the 6 foot mark in my home is not my business.
Yeah.
That's not for me to know.
That's not within my zip code.
So if you want to be up there and just catch like flies and gnats and stuff, go for it, homie. You just can't be on my kitchen counter. That's really all I ask. I'm happy to cohabitate and have some roommates. But like, have I had spiders descend from my ceiling and on my couch that I was sitting on, like watching the Food Network? And then in college, and I had to matrix under that spider, which was like the most athletic thing I'd done in 6 months, grab my phone and my keys and leave for 3 hours and then come back. And there was no spider. And I'm like, we're going to pretend that didn't happen. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
So yeah, that bit where, because for me, it's like how they move and like, when you're like talking to the spider and she's like moving her little middle legs. And I'm just like, oh, God, I hate it. Oh, God, I hate it.
No, yeah. I was in the Shadowfell and there's like a specific cursed dead bird on the ground.
And but if you go to loot because you're a fucking gremlin,
yeah, because I'm a goblin and I need to loot the one feather that's in the fucking bird. And I touch it, and then suddenly you are swarmed by like 20 something fucking ravens.
Yeah.
And
you don't have a lot of health at that point because you've already gotten in like 6 different fights.
And I remember I was on a call with a friend of mine, and he was like, the way I panicked.
Yeah.
And he's like, wait, are you actually like, is this actually affecting you in a real way? I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to throw
This
up.
isn't a bit.
I'm going to throw up actively right now because my character, Val, was so surrounded by birds, I couldn't see her.
That was what happened with Anya. Too.
And that just gave me like, and I immediately was like, I opened my inventory and I was like, oh, firewall, literally friendly fire. Everybody's getting burned.
Doesn't matter.
We're killing all these birds in one fell swoop. I don't give a fuck. Everybody's getting toasted today.
Yeah, I've never been so glad to have either like turn undead or destroy undead or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I did have Shadowheart as a cleric, and then I play a paladin. I'm rocked after like Strixhaven Anya.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, like I made her guardian after one of Strixhaven Anya's love interests, and that man could tell me
too disrespectful.
That man could tell me to jump off a cliff and be like, how far would you like me to jump out?
Which cliff?
Literally, like I had not been eating, like consuming the little worms at all. I'd not been doing any of the like mind flayer shit. And he's like, you really should consider
and
it.
You start popping them hoes like gummies.
Truly, yeah, like M&Ms, just like
just a little snack.
Just nom nomming.
Yeah. We have problematic taste in men in fantasy, not in real life.
Yeah.
And thank God for that. But yeah, I think that kind of sums up most of our
it does.
most of our ideas on Baldur's Gate. It's such a great tool. I highly recommend it. Anybody that hasn't played it, please go do so. Especially if you're considering taking up the hobby, or if you just want to get better at the hobby, or you just are like, this is my hyperfixation and 90% of my personality, and I must consume all the content that exists around it. Do so. That was not a statement made about myself. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's all of us.
It's all of us. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Table Talk is a podcast brought to you by Mythos Media Productions, bringing you a new episode every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcast. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Table Talk RPG, or check us out at our website, mythosmediaproductions.godaddyscites.com. All business inquiries can reach out to us via email at info@mythosmediaproductions.com.